Welcome to Spiritual Insights for Challenging Times. I'm Ellen Barron, and it is my pleasure to invite you to today's episode. Hi, it's so great to have you here with me today. I want to talk about something that has been extremely important to me. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you have met someone or watched them walk through a heartbreaking situation without becoming bitter? Have you met someone in your life's journey that maybe is going through a very deep grieving process and you can still sense and feel a peaceful energy? Have you been in a situation where something is very, very challenging and you're not sure how you're going to go through it and you actually have no idea? Well, that's what I want to talk about today because I'm going to share with you a personal journey of mine that changed my life, a journey that allowed me to navigate these kind of life challenges, ones that as I was going through them felt overwhelming, but I did it coming from a place of peace and serenity and strength. So I want to start by sharing with you that 40 years ago, I found myself in a very challenging time of my life. My life felt unmanageable, and I ended up going to a recovery program. And one of the greatest gifts that I received wasn't merely recovery, it was the spiritual path that has changed my life. It was a path that opened me up to spiritual practices that I could apply to my everyday life. Spiritual practices that actually woke me up, woke me up so that I was able to see myself in a very different light. I was able to look at those things that were alive and happening within me and welcome them in to be healed, to be changed, to be released. And the process that I'm talking about is self awareness, mindfulness, and meditation. So I want to start with self awareness. How many of us find ourselves caught in an emotional reaction to something? My goodness, sometimes we don't have to go too far, do we, today, with all of the stuff that comes up on the news? How many of us are struggling with the things that we keep hearing about because things are changing so quickly? So if you find yourself maybe in a moment of fear or anger or feeling a lack of control, how do you deal with that? What can you do, and how does self-awareness change anything? So the first step to me with self-awareness is to be conscious that, wow, I'm having a reaction. I'm having a reaction. I'm feeling frightened. I'm feeling whatever it is. Now, to be honest with you, early in my spiritual journey, when it was asked of me, well, what are you feeling? I could hardly identify what the feeling was. I had a very limited feeling vocabulary. So it isn't always easy to get there. In fact, a lot of times, who wants to, right? Who wants to? Who wants to go into a moment that is uncomfortable? But I'm here to tell you that it's the only way to navigate to a place where you have the inner strength, where you can stay rooted in that sense of peace, regardless of what's going on in your life, is to take these steps. And the first one is to allow ourselves to be okay with whatever is showing up. We don't have to like the emotion, but we have to say, oh, I'm angry. I'm I'm full of fear. Maybe it's even in the first beginning, it's like, I don't even know what I feel, but boy, I'm not at peace. I'm not at rest. Now, there's one more part of this that I want to share with you. As we start with the self awareness, it's like, what in me is disturbed? because you might then want to point your fingers. If that person hadn't said that, if this wasn't going on over here, if that hadn't happened, I would be okay. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. We bring ourselves to every situation. So the first place is self awareness. I have to take my lens off of what the other person is doing or not doing and bring that lens into myself. Wow, I am reacting. I am reacting. What can this tell me about myself? Now, the second step that was focused on, which I said is mindfulness, in the early part of my spiritual journey in this recovery program, I looked at it as letting go and letting God. And even that was a challenge back then because letting go, it's like, are you kidding me? I have to be in control of my life. How can I let go and just assume everything is going to be okay? It was a paradox that really had me stumped. I was very used to saying, I'm in control of my life. And that was another delusion, illusion, whatever you want to call it, because I was in the recovery program because I had already said my life is unmanageable. Okay. So sometimes our minds can do this for us, right? We can be sure that we've got to have control, and yet saying, I surrender because I obviously have lost control. Quick aside, I was married at one time and things had gotten very, very bad. And I remember sitting there saying, this is unacceptable. And I was still there. So that's an example of how crazy our thinking can become. So the letting go is a trust, it's an allowing. It's saying basically that I can't do this. So I am going to let go and let a higher power, let something else in to lift me, to guide me, to strengthen me. That's the spiritual part. That's the spiritual part. And we can't get to this step without starting to become self aware, without starting to be awake to what is moving within us. I've learned since then that this is mindfulness because mindfulness is simply being in the present moment, which means I have to catch myself when I'm stuck in worrying about the past or worrying about the future. I have to breathe and just say, okay, what is going on right now? Let me just connect to this present moment and be here, which is really the letting go. That is really as simple as the letting go gets. And once I do that, then I can go into self awareness, mindfulness, and meditation. Then I can go into meditation. Again, at the beginning of my journey, meditation was a baffling word for me. With my background, I had grown up with prayer, and prayer at the time for me had a formula. You know, you were basically saying your prayers. In the recovery program, it was explained to me that prayer is talking to God and meditation is listening. Today, I have a little bit of an expanded, a little bit of a altered idea on prayer and meditation that we'll get to another time. But for right now, what I want to really share is that meditation, if you're not used to it, if you aren't comfortable doing it, if it's a new practice for you, it's really simply saying that I'm going to pay attention that I don't have a monkey mind going on in this moment. Remember, we already did our self-awareness. So we've been catching what's going on in us. And now we did our mindfulness, our letting go, our bringing ourselves to the present moment, using a pause, using our breath, focusing on our body, just breathing in and relaxing. That's the mindfulness, letting the thoughts just drift away. I like to say, let them just go like clouds, see them floating off. Any of your concerns, any of your fears, anxiety, negative self-talk. And now this opens me up to meditation. because I have become still. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm never going to have a thought in my head. That's really very hard because we're not designed that way. But if we stop and we just think about the fact that I'm back on my breath, what happens is we are not thinking about all of the problems. We're not thinking of the past or the future, our to do list. We're allowing a space for something that's already within us to emerge, the insight, the strength, the guidance, the love, the love. So that is a simple definition of meditation. And now I want to share another part of my personal journey because I'm in this spiritual path for about 20 years when my son became sick with cancer. And it was a very disruptive, as you can totally imagine, shocking, disruptive. He was a very, very young person, a young man. He was not a child anymore. He was in his 20s. He was a young adult. It was his whole life ahead of him. And I would say the anxiety, the fear, the stress, the everything bigger than life story was unfolding. But during that period, he ended up going into therapy and had looked at his early childhood. And we would sit and he would open up to me about the things that were really still issues that he was holding on to. But because I had this practice in my life for 20 years, I could listen without being defensive. I didn't feel the need to jump in and correct him with any of the things that he was remembering or wanting to say to me. I was able to listen and hear it and empathize and be fully present just in love. I know that that is not how I would have been able to show up. I would have been showing up with my own drama, of the pain and the craziness and everything else. This is what I was talking about before when we started. Have you ever met someone who had a heartbreak and they weren't bitter? There was a sense of peace about them because that is how I felt. I used a practice of daily prayer and meditation in my life for 20 years, and that is what I drew upon during this time. Now, I also had a strong support system in place as well. So I want to go back and just revisit with you the importance of these 3 steps. Self-aware. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where maybe somebody says something that's very hurtful to you, and right away you start going into, why would they have said this? What did I do? Don't they know me better than this? I bet you have, because I know that I still can do that. And like I said, I'm on this journey a long time already, practicing this to the best of my ability on a daily basis. And I still get triggered. I still have responses. I still can have that self-critical voice that comes up in my head. So when that happens, all I have to do is become aware. We talked about this in one of our podcasts when we had Betty Spurrill was our guest, in how to do listening as just a neutral activity, listening as the witness, listening to what's coming up in me. I want to add that, not only listening to what the person is saying. What in me is the reaction? What in me is the reaction? What am I feeling? What do I need? There's that next step. What do I need? Then all we have to do is, once we have opened to this activity, remembering that emotions are energy, and the thoughts and the story that comes up in our head fuels the emotion. So we want to be aware of what we're saying so we can release it. We want to connect to the energy that's coming. We're not going to try to push the energy down or anything else, but bear in mind, If you do not do this, energy gets stuck. It's going to go into our body and cause physical problems, or it's going to come out in inappropriate ways. Energy has to do something. And we get the choice to just take a breath. Let that energy go. It has no power over me. Then we go into our mindfulness. In this present moment, I pause. I take a deep breath. I just relax. I allow myself to be here in this moment, fully present. I let go of the monkey mind. I let go of the energy of that emotion. Maybe I start focusing on my body. Where in my body is this energy still stuck? Is it my jaw? Is it my heart? Is it my throat? Is it my gut? Focusing on our body also is a wonderful tool to bring us into the present moment. Because if you're focused on your body, you've left your head. This connection, head to heart, it's not far, but boy, it takes work. It takes work to come out of that thought process and trust in this inner spiritual process and journey. That leads us to meditation. I want to invite you to join me right now on this meditation. Let's do this for just 2 minutes. Let's take a deep breath. Let's take that breath. Let's just relax. Feel our body loosen up and relax. We've let go of whatever is that negative energy, whether it's about ourselves or we're still holding on to the pain of what somebody said. I'm not enough. I can't. We've put our hands on that part of our body that is feeling this pain. Where does it hurt? And we just breathe in and breathe out. We allow the energy to dissipate. Feel that energy just releasing, floating out. And now I invite you to do a mantra. God is, I am. God is love, I am love. God is strength, I am strength. I have the strength within me to do all the things that are mine to do. And taking another breath in, let's come back together. And I want to just ask you to feel into that moment. Did it change? Did it help? You don't have to, this is called the joy of the journey. You don't have to be perfect at any of these things. I was just talking with a friend of mine this morning, and we were laughing that we've been doing this for a long time, and it's still always the same story. When I have my moment, these are the steps that I take. Over the next couple of weeks, what we're going to do is I am going to continue to have guests here, and we're going to talk about how do we access love? How do we open up our heart? How do we do compassion? Whoa, that's something that I think our world could need more of. How do we do compassion, kindness, all of those kind of things? I have a list of so many wonderful topics that I want to be bringing to you. And I'd love to have you respond with some of the topics that you would like to hear. Where are you stuck? Where are you finding yourself challenged? Or is it a health challenge? Is it a finance? Is it the world situation? Is there some special technique or some spiritual insight that you want to share that's changed your life? That or a question about one of the things that we are talking about here on these podcasts? Because this is for us. This is for us. This is a journey that we all benefit because you know something? Life is meant to be relational. I really, really believe that. I believe that we are all interrelated. And for me, trying to do things on my own isn't as powerful, doesn't have the same impact when I do it with you, when I do it with others. So I look forward to chatting with you on our next podcast. Share with me, and I will be glad to share back with you. Namaste. Thank you for spending your time here today. I hope that this episode was insightful for you, perhaps even offering some actionable steps. Leave a comment in the chat box. I would love to connect with you. And join us again